Last summer, I went on a solo road trip from Oregon to Colorado. I wanted to save time and money, so instead of stopping halfway and booking a hotel, I planned to drive through the night and rest during the day once I arrived. It sounded tough, but I thought I could handle it. I left around 6:30 in the evening. I checked everything in my car, made sure I had snacks and drinks in the front seat, and hit the road. The first hour was through small towns and a bit of traffic, but soon it turned into long stretches of open highway, just trees, fields, and the occasional mountain view. After about an hour and a half, I noticed my gas tank was about 2/3 full. Still, I didn't want to risk running low later where stations might be harder to find, so I decided to top off the tank. It took me nearly 25 minutes to find a gas station. It was small, only a few pumps, and the store was closed. The place looked like it hadn't seen much use in a while. I got out and started pumping gas, but the pump was painfully slow. 1 gallon took nearly a full minute. While I waited, a car came down the road slowly. It passed the gas station at first, but then reversed and pulled in behind me. That seemed strange and kind of unsafe, especially on a dark, narrow road. I figured maybe they just really needed gas. A man stepped out. He was tall, wearing a dark hoodie and jeans. I noticed he was just standing there, staring at me. When I looked over, he didn't look away. I gave an awkward smile and turned back to my pump. After what felt like a long pause, he finally grabbed the pump and started fueling up. I felt a bit better. Maybe I was just being paranoid. Once I finished, I got in my car and drove off. For a while, I didn't think much of it, but after 3 more hours of driving, it began to rain. The rain made it harder to stay focused, and I started feeling really tired. Around 1 a.m., I found another gas station. This one was just as empty and run down as the first, but the lights were on, so I stopped to fill up again. After fueling, I parked beside the building to rest. I looked at the weather and checked my phone. There weren't any towns nearby. I figured a 30-minute nap would help me stay safe on the road. I leaned my seat back and dozed off. About 25 minutes later, I woke up to the sound of rain hitting my car roof. My alarm hadn't even gone off yet. I sat up and glanced through the windshield and saw a car at the pump. My heart skipped. It looked just like the one from earlier. I squinted, trying to see more clearly. There was no one in the driver's seat. No one outside either. I started feeling uneasy. It was the middle of nowhere, and that man's car just happened to be here again. I quickly turned on my car and started backing up. As I looked in the rearview mirror, my stomach dropped. The man was in my back seat. His eyes were wide and expressionless, just staring at me. I panicked, shoved the door open, and jumped out of the car while it was still rolling in reverse. I ran as fast as I could into the nearby trees and crouched behind some brush. I watched in shock as my car rolled back slowly, then suddenly stopped. The man got into the driver's seat and drove away, disappearing into the night, with my phone still on the dashboard. After a few minutes, I noticed he left his own car behind. I cautiously walked over. The doors were unlocked, keys still in the ignition. There were grocery bags in the back seat. Strangely, I found a phone on the floor near the passenger seat. It was locked, but I could still call emergency services. When the police arrived, things started to make sense, and got even more disturbing. That car wasn't his. It had been reported stolen a week earlier. Everything inside belonged to someone else, someone who wasn't as lucky as I was. The investigators believed the man didn't sneak into my car by chance. He was likely waiting for the right time to attack. Why? No one knows for sure. But he was never caught. And my car? Never found either. It happened last winter, sometime in late January. I live in a small house on the edge of a quiet rural town, surrounded by lots of tall pine trees. The town is about an hour away from the nearest big city. That day, I had only worked in the morning, so I had the evening free to relax. Around 6:30 p.m., I got a call from a friend. His car had broken down again, and he asked if I could pick him up and maybe grab a bite to eat together. I didn't mind, this had happened before, and I was happy to help. I threw on my coat, grabbed my keys, and headed for the door. But the second I opened it, I froze. A man was standing right there on my porch, just inches from me. He wore a thick jacket and had a dark scarf pulled up over the bottom half of his face. He didn't flinch or act surprised, just stood still staring. I jumped a little, more out of shock than fear, and then quickly tried to calm myself down. Before I could say anything, the man apologized and said he was about to knock. He asked if I was someone named Brian or maybe Darren. I couldn't quite tell. I told him no, he had the wrong house. Without saying much else, he turned around and walked down my driveway toward the road. I watched him until he disappeared behind the trees, then locked my door and left to pick up my friend. The whole drive, I couldn't stop thinking about that strange guy. My neighborhood is so quiet and tucked away that it's rare for anyone to just show up at your door like that, especially a stranger. I picked up my friend, we grabbed something simple to eat, and I dropped him off at his place around 8:45. It had started snowing lightly, and the wind was calm. I headed back home, pulled into my driveway, and went inside to warm up. After flopping onto the couch, I put on a show and relaxed. Since I didn't have work the next day, I didn't care about the time. I think I stayed there for a couple of hours before feeling tired. When I got up and turned off the TV, I walked past the front door, and that's when I remembered the man from earlier. Out of curiosity, I peeked through the peephole. The porch was empty, and everything seemed peaceful outside. But then I noticed something odd in the snow. There were fresh footprints. I couldn't see clearly through the peephole, so I slowly opened the door and looked out. The tracks came from the road, walked up my driveway, passed near my parked car, and then veered off into the trees. My stomach dropped. I quickly shut and locked the door, now feeling very uneasy. Was this the same guy from earlier? If so, why had he come back? I went from window to window, checking the yard, trying to see if anyone was still out there. Eventually, I decided to call the police. I told the dispatcher what was going on, though I felt a bit paranoid. But as I was on the phone, I started to hear something, small noises like faint crunches or knocks. Every time I paused to listen, they'd stop. It was driving me crazy. Then, all of a sudden, there was a loud bang at the back of the house. It made me jump, and I nearly dropped my phone. I ran to the back hallway and heard another loud crash. Someone was trying to break in through the back door. I couldn't see much outside because of the glare from the indoor lights, but I could see shadows moving. They were hitting the door hard with something, maybe a tool or a blunt object. The police operator told me to either hide somewhere or escape. I grabbed my keys and sprinted out the front door to my car, heart pounding. I kept looking around, worried someone might be waiting nearby, but thankfully the yard was empty. I jumped in, started the engine, and drove off fast. When the officers arrived later, they found the back door busted open and wet footprints all over the floor. But the intruder was gone. I described the man from earlier, but there was no proof it was the same person, and they never found him. I still think about how lucky I was that night. If I hadn't seen those footprints when I did, I might have just gone to bed. And if I had, who knows what would have happened. What really scares me is that nothing about that day felt unusual. It was just a normal evening, until it wasn't. And the scariest part? The man was never caught. I still wonder if he'll come back. It was back in 2019. I was a second-year college student, and to help pay off my car, I used to babysit a few nights a week. One of the families I helped out had a 3-year-old girl. I only watched her once a week for about a month. The parents were quiet, but always polite. They usually left just before bedtime, so most nights, all I had to do was keep an eye on the house while the child slept. They were gone for about 4 or 5 hours each time. One Friday evening, I arrived at their house around 7:30 p.m. The mom and dad told me their daughter was already asleep in their room. They thanked me and left shortly after. I never really asked where they went, but they once mentioned they liked to drive into the city, maybe for a late dinner or a movie. After they left, I did my usual quick check of the house. Then I sat on the couch in the living room. They always told me I could watch TV or help myself to snacks, but I usually just scrolled on my phone or checked in on the child every so often. About 45 minutes later, my phone rang. It was the mom. She sounded a little confused and asked if I had just called her. I told her no, I hadn't touched my phone besides watching a video. She said she got a call from a strange number, but no one spoke when she picked up. She wondered if it might have been me from a different phone. I reassured her everything was fine at the house, and she said okay and hung up. I didn't think much of it. I figured she was just being cautious. After another 20 minutes, while still watching something on my phone, I noticed headlights shining through the blinds. At first, I assumed it was just a neighbor, but the lights didn't move for a long time. Curious, I peeked out the window. There was an old, dark-colored car parked right in front of the house. It looked beat up, and the windows were tinted so dark I couldn't see inside. Then I noticed a man standing near the sidewalk. He was facing the house and just staring. I didn't want to confront him, especially since it wasn't my house. So I just watched quietly from behind the curtain. After a minute, the man walked slowly back to his car and drove away. But strangely, he didn't go far. I could still see the headlights down the road between the trees. Then the lights turned off like he had parked again. I waited by the window for another few minutes, but he never came back. I eventually went back to the living room, thinking maybe he just got lost or had the wrong address. About an hour and a half passed. It was quiet. I had the TV on low and started to feel sleepy. I was sort of half awake when I heard a soft thump. At first, I thought I imagined it, but then I heard it again, louder this time. I stood up, planning to check on the girl upstairs, but as I passed through the hallway, something caught my eye. I turned and froze. There was a man at the back door. He was pulling hard on the handle, and he saw me watching him. As soon as our eyes met, he yanked even harder, trying to force the door open. My heart was racing. I ran upstairs and grabbed the little girl. She was still half asleep, so I tried not to scare her. Downstairs, I could hear louder banging. It sounded like he was using something to break the door open. I didn't know what else to do. With the girl in my arms, I rushed back down. Just as I reached the bottom, I heard a loud cracking sound. I turned and saw the back door was open, and the man was inside. He was wearing regular clothes, had dark hair, and worst of all, he had a knife in his hand. As soon as he saw me, he ran toward us. I didn't wait. I sprinted to the front door, flung it open, and got into my car. I barely managed to back out of the driveway before he reached the car. I drove straight to a nearby gas station and called 911, then called the parents. By the time police arrived at the house, the man was already gone. I truly believe he had planned to hurt me and take the child. What still gives me chills is how he seemed to know exactly when the parents would be gone. And why that little girl? Why that house? What's strange is, after that night, the parents never contacted me again. They thanked me briefly that evening, but after that, nothing. No follow-up, no messages. It felt like they didn't want to talk about it. I later tried to look into it myself. I didn't find much, except that the mom had been married before. Her ex-husband looked kind of like the man I saw that night. I can't say for sure it was him, but it still makes me wonder. It's been years now, and I still don't have any real answers. Just a memory that haunts me every time I drive past an old house with dim lights and overgrown trees.